Many children with autism spectrum disorder will be over or underreactive to sensory stimuli, including touch, taste, smell, sound, light, and or movement. By regulating the amount and intensity of stimulation, it helps to keep the nervous system calm, organised, and focused. Children can be under-aroused and sluggish one moment and overwhelmed and anxious the next. Meeting sensory needs can include using sensory tools to regulate behaviour or adapting activities to reduce sensory stimulation. For example, some children can sit for longer periods with a sensory tool or fidget, while others may need clothing adaptations, socks with no overlocking for them to wear. Temple Grandin, an adult with ASD, advocates for awareness of different children having different sensory needs. Hi everyone, welcome to the Sue Larkey podcast. As I always say, you have to embrace difference to make a difference. Let's dive into today's podcast. Well, welcome everybody. I am super excited today because I've finally set a date for my free live webinar this term. It's from 4 till 5 on Wednesday, August the 2nd. Now remember, you can sign up for the replay or to join me live. I would encourage you to join me live because it's interactive, fast-moving. People who come absolutely love it. Last year, this was one of my most popular webinars. This is the often overlooked reasons for behaviour. This is the stuff I wish I'd learnt 30 years ago. In fact, it underpins my master's and my doctorate. It's such important information, and I know it's going to make the world of difference to you and the children you know. As always, I'm going to have prizes and lots of giveaways on the day. And if you sign up for the replay, you can still go in a draw to win. I've got some new things to give away, which is always fun. So I really would encourage you to grab your diary out now and put Wednesday, the 2nd of August in. And the replay, if you can't join me live, maybe put a note in your diary when you're going to watch it that weekend. Because procrastination is, it's so easy to go later. But I promise you that hour is going to save you a lot of time and stress. Understanding the things you can put in place for children. So one of my favourite sayings is it's easier to change the structure than change the child. And one of the biggest structural changes is sensory, understanding the child's under reactions, their sensory needs, which is all the stuff I learned from occupational therapists when I worked in a special school. But I didn't learn any of that at uni. So I'm going to give you the tips and strategies that I think would make the world of difference. Now, with this webinar goes a free ebook as well, because if I put all the tips in your handout for the webinar for an hour, I would overwhelm you. So I have the ebook, which I'm going to talk through today a little bit like an audio book. And so if you can't join me on the day, you're still going to get some tips, or if you're not a webinar person, I always like to help, appeal to different learning styles. So if you like more of a sensory book, more of a reading, then have a read of the ebook. But the webinar has another handout with one of my favourite visuals on de-escalation. So I would highly recommend you sign up and download that handout as well. Okay, have I just overwhelmed you? 3 steps so far. Step 1, August 2nd in your diary. Step 2, even if you can't make it on August 2nd, check your emails and make sure you sign up to join me live or for the replay. And step 3 is download the free ebook that I'm talking through today, plus download the handout. Now, personally, I would recommend downloading it onto your phone or your iPad or whatever device, but I like it like on your phone. So if you're sitting somewhere and you want something to flick through, you can just flick through that PDF in your whatever device you use. You can just save it as a PDF. I have it in my iBooks. I think that's what it's called on my iPad. I love having those PDFs, particularly because I spend a lot of time at airports, and I find like it's great to have ebooks downloaded. The other thing is that, just so you know, I don't like Zoom that are a webinar function because we can't do the chat and the polls and engage and spotlight people. So we can only have 1,000 people on that call. So as a podcast listener, a little hint, I recommend wherever you are, sign on at 3:30 Sydney time. Because what happens, everyone jumps on in the last 10 minutes. So sign on at 3:30. I have these nice motivational quotes and music on. Walk away and come back at 10 to 4, okay? And come back at 10 to 4, then you're guaranteed you've got your spot. Go and grab a cuppa, do whatever. Some of you I know watch it on your iPhone. Last term I spotlighted someone who was in their car driving, which was very funny. Anyway, we can do all these fun things. But the advantage of that using the Zoom in that format is you get the chat and it's far more engaging. Just so you know, I don't record the chat. I don't record the faces. The webinar replay is just me for confidentiality. So please make sure you get on early so you don't miss out. Now, you're probably like, Sue, I haven't seen that email to sign up for the webinar. Can I get you to just check in your spam? Because I send an email every week. A lot of email providers think I'm sending you junk, which, okay, some people might think it is, but I hope you don't think it's junk. I put a lot of time and effort. I put like 5 hours a week into creating those emails, podcasts and things for you, which I love doing, as you know, because it's such a great way to give you the tips and strategies to make a difference. So can you just open a couple of my emails or click on a few things, because normally that means your email provider will believe that I'm not junk mail. But the best way to find the emails is just search in your emails by Sue Larkey and remember the EY, and then you'll find some, and I don't know, I think it's called whitelisting. I get so confused, but ask somebody to help you with that. The other thing I wanted to remind you was I have got workshops coming up this term. I'm super excited. I'm going to be in Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, Tasmania. Sorry, everywhere else. I have tried to get to most of you this year, but you can join me for the live virtual webinars, which have the same reviews and feedbacks as the face-to-face. I was interested. I did a poll last week on Instagram. 50% of people said they like face-to-face, 25% said live virtual, and 25% said online on demand. So all of those options are available to you. Same course, same information. The ratings are exactly the same. I spent a bit of time over these school holidays going back through my reviews, bit like for this upcoming webinar. I always like to read the feedback and ensure that I'm actually getting your feedback and adjusting things. And I'll be honest, it's always a little bit vulnerable to read reviews, but from my face-to-face workshops, I had 1,031 people give it a 5-star rating. They were all like, do it, amazing, whatever, okay? And I mean, that just blows my mind that of the people who have attended this year, that was the feedback. But the same from the live virtual. I think there was 400 people have done live virtual this year, and the same 5-star, same feedback, the same, like no changes in either of those formats, which are different formats, as you know. But I do wonder when I was reading the reviews if maybe people go to the format they like best. So therefore the reviews are similar because they're doing the format they prefer. Anyway, and the same with the online on demand. So just a reminder, you can choose any of those options. Personally, I love term 3 for learning because my class is normally settled. I can step out for a day. I normally try and make my workshops Thursdays and Fridays because as a teacher, I prefer being out of class Thursday and Friday. I can have everything set up for the week. I'm often not missing so much. And that's why I like to do the workshops on Thursdays and Fridays to make it rather than the start of the week for teachers. The same, the live virtual is on a Friday. The other thing I love about term 3 in the States, I've worked in Queensland. Where have I worked? I've worked Western Australia, South Australia, New South Wales, Victoria. In all those states where I've taught in classrooms, I love term 3 because no parent-teacher interviews, no reports, no long weekends. I think maybe one of those states we did have a long weekend, but I just love, there's no long weekends. And so therefore I feel like a day out of the classroom isn't such a big deal. I don't feel like I'm missing so many teaching days. So I love term 3 for professional development. So I would love to see you this term. As I say, have a look at the feedback. I've put it up on the website now, so click on the workshop you want to go to and you'll see the reviews. If you're not sure if it's for you, or maybe your boss isn't sure if it's for you, show them some of the reviews. I think they'll be like, wow, let's do it. Anyway, I can't wait to see you and connect with you and just give you the confidence to support the children you know and give you all the tips and strategies I wished I had 30 years ago. I mean, I just wish I had this stuff. And you could spend hours Googling or come along for 5 hours and learn lots of tips and strategies and even just the reassurance you're on the right path. So, let me get into this week's podcast, which is the ebook. So if you haven't already downloaded it, I highly recommend you download the ebook so that you can refer back to it and read along as we go. So this is all sensory strategies for educators to increase engagement and participation. But parents, this is really helpful for you to talk to your educators about. I mean, remember, for a 3-year-old, understanding that child's sensory needs is massive. But for many of you in secondary, some of your teenagers, when they hit puberty, some of their sensory changes. When your hormones are racing around, your body changes. Often we need to go back and look at sensory. Some of my children become more sensory sensitive. Some of my children's senses become confused. I remember when I worked with OTs in specialist schools, they often had to do a new assessment when a child hit puberty because their body changes. They'd got taller. Anna Tulliman's son Daniel started bumping into things because he'd lost that where his body was in space with that quick growth spurt. So worth thinking about. So the start of this ebook, I just want to read it to you. And as you know, I don't really like reading out loud. Maybe this is where I need to get a robot like ChatGPT to read out loud. So I'm going to put my reading out loud voice on, as my children would say when I used to read them bedtime stories. So, many children with autism spectrum disorder will be over or underreactive to sensory stimuli, including touch, taste, smell, sound, light, and or movement. By regulating the amount and intensity of stimulation, it helps to keep the nervous system calm, organised, and focused. Children can be under-aroused and sluggish one moment and overwhelmed and anxious the next. Meeting sensory needs can include using sensory tools to regulate behaviour or adapting activities to reduce sensory stimulation. For example, some children can sit for longer periods with a sensory tool or fidget, while others may need clothing adaptations, socks with no overlocking for them to wear. Temple Grandin, an adult with ASD, advocates for awareness of different children having different sensory needs. She encapsulates this difference by stating, one kid's got sensitivity, another one can't tolerate fluorescent lights. I can't stand scratchy clothes. In my experience, many children need sensory adaptations in the classrooms. This is me talking now, not Temple. Simple changes in the environment can make a big difference to children's engagement and learning outcomes. You could spend all day asking a child to sit still on the mat or give them the sensory mat to sit on that helps them sit still. On the rest of the book, we're going to go through a lot of sensory tools and supports to make a difference. So I'm going to go through all of these things. But I like this quote from Temple. My nervous system was all hyped up, like it was a jungle full of dangerous animals for no reason. How can you socialise if the environment is hurting you from a sensory standpoint? And then she says, one kid's got sound sensitivity, another can't stand fluorescent lights. I can't stand scratchy clothes. So I recommend you download the book because it goes through so many things that people don't realise are sensory. Now, I know there's a lot of conjecture, and this has sensory autism spectrum disorder, ASD, in this book. And it's funny, I was talking to Kay Algani, who I wrote the Red Bees workbook with, and I'm super excited how many of you have now got that book and giving me amazing feedback. So thank you for that. I really was a passion project to do with Kay. with the time difference to the UK and things. So I'm super excited because I love the Red Beast picture book, and to work with Kay to create really how I've used the book in the classroom and how she's used it is super exciting. But it's interesting. She was saying to me when Haytham got diagnosed, she found the word disorder in autism spectrum disorder really helpful as a parent. And I'd never thought of it like this. And this is why I find it so helpful to talk to lived experience, but also parents' lived experience of getting a diagnosis and what it's like. So with Haytham, what she said, she found the word disorder so helpful because Haytham has always been an amazing drawer, and he used drawing to communicate and to illustrate from a very young age. He could do these amazing illustrations and drawings, which, have gone on to be his career. But he couldn't do simple things, or if she went simple things like, doing up his shoelaces, but yet he could do amazing drawings. If she walked a different way to the shops with him in his pushchair, as they call it in the UK, he would get anxious if there was a change of routine. So she likes the word disorder because it's not a delay. It's actually disorder. And I thought that makes a lot of sense. I can have children who can read but can't comprehend. I can have children who, can do a jigsaw puzzle but can't do an insert puzzle. I can have children that can count but not understand number. So that makes sense why originally we used the word disorder. I mean, I agree, I like the word condition or autism spectrum, but I guess I thought it just gave me a new perspective, and I'm always learning, and I just wanted to say that. So I was going to get rid of, when I revised this book, the ASD, and then I thought, no, I get what Kay's saying. It makes sense why some of my children are really good at maths but struggle with English. For secondary school teachers listening, why a child's learning can be disordered. So maybe as educators, we have to understand that word disorder in not a disorder as in a negative way, as in this explains why one child can have amazing gross and fine motor skills and another child doesn't. That explains that. Anyway, I wasn't going to spend ages on that, but I just wanted to mention that to you. So back to the book. On page 3, there are 11 common signs of sensory processing disorder or difficulties. So remember, autism, and back to diagnosis, autism spectrum, sensory processing disorder, there's conjecture around that language too, but let's call it difficulties. Number 1, extra sensitive to touch. They don't like to be touched or can't be touched enough. So one of my children will love touch and another will hate touch. Number 2, sensitivity to sound. They may cover their ears when the same noises don't bother others. Not all children are sound sensitive. Picky eaters. And I know some people don't like that word, picky eaters, but I did a great podcast on that about fussy eaters, picky eatings, but they're the words parents relate to. They're the words that parents hear. We understand it's far more complex than that, and some children have AFRED and all of these things, but knowing that this child mightn't eat a range of food, as an educator, this is important. If you do crunch and sip and children are meant to only have fruit and vegetables, this child might need an adaptation there. You might need to be allowed them to have barbecue shapes or dry noodles, or one of my little boys, Ricky, Nutrigrain. Crunch and sip is about giving children that food break. Well, what does this child need? If they need specific food, make sure they have it. But then I have other children who eat everything. So being aware of that. Number 4, movement. Unusual body posture, constantly moving, or actually having difficulty with movement. So I have children who can't walk upstairs to children who run and climb on everything. Number 5 is that hyperactivity for children who can't sleep still. And they're often my children who have trouble with sleeping, and I've got some sleep hints later on in this. I was listening to a really interesting podcast the other day. I don't even know. It was just one of those ones that came up when I was driving. And it wasn't even to do with, most of my podcasts are to do with education, autism, so forth. It was just a random podcast. And it was about the incredible importance of sleep and the restorative nature of sleep. So for many of my children who have never had a good night's sleep, that impacts on their sensory as well. Because think of yourself, if you're tired, are you more sound sensitive? If you're tired, I don't know, when I'm tired, I'm hungrier, but I don't know what I feel like eating. Think of yourself, how does tiredness impact on your eating? do you stop eating? Some people actually stop eating when they're hungry, are you hungry, angry? So have a think about that. But the sleep, that's so interesting. And I think we need to be aware that for so many of our children, they struggle with sleep. I have tried to write a sleep on many occasions with parents, with educators, psychologists, and I've got nowhere with that book because sleep is such a hard thing to make somebody sleep. I don't know how you do that. And everyone is so different with their sleep. Some children can go straight to sleep. Some wake up in the middle of the night. So I don't know. I wish I could help with that elusive sleep. I'm sure that there's many of you who know what I'm talking about. Gross and fine motor skills. Obviously, some children have trouble with fine motor. Avoidance of sensory stimulation. So they won't do the messy, those of you in the early childhood will see this, where they won't do the finger paint and the messy activities. Trouble with balance. My children who are accident prone. I remember a parent going to the doctor and her son was covered in bruises and she was so embarrassed because he just bumped into everything before his diagnosis. And easily distracted. And remember, distraction can be noise, movement, touch. It can be a range of things. So I highly recommend you have a little look at that checklist. And in the webinar, where I'm actually going to give you a pro forma to fill in for the children and the individual child so that you can think about what is the issue for this child, and what are the sensory things we could think about understanding individually for that child. Now, in the Kids Guide to Being Awesome, which is that book I love of Lauren Bruckner's, that talks about children, some children need calming activities and some children need alerting activities. So what I've put in the ebook, 10 of Lauren's calming activities and 10 of her alerting activities. So calming activities might be a massage, sitting on a bean chair, slow rocking, soft, slow music, joint compression, stretching, chewing, sucking, a range of, fidget activities, or squeezing a stress ball. Whereas alerting activities could be rubbing, using like the tiger brushes I have, or allowing a child to have a chewy break or a chewy stick. Alerting activities can be actually doing push-ups, skipping, running, hopscotch, lifting something heavy, maybe even bouncing a ball, swinging, jumping on a trampoline. It might be kicking, bouncing, throwing a ball. It could actually be giving the child something strong to taste, a strong flavour, which is some of our chewy activities, actually, chewing gum for some of my children. Loud and fast music. It could be fidget toys. It could be sitting on a cushion or physical exercise. Now, any of you going, what about the other kids? Please make sure you join me for the webinar. We're going to cover that in the webinar because that is always the number one thing. Now, on page 5, I love this quote from Temple Grandin. She says, "They are like a phone with one bar service. You have to give them time to download the image." Now, I don't think it's just download the image, it's also the words. So this is about slow processing speed and the modifications you can put in place. For some of my children, this is why I say you can't flash up visuals and take them away. Visuals are so important because they support the words that we use, and words disappear, visuals can be referred back to. But remember, visuals need to be left up too. But also, if people are visual thinkers like Temple Grandin, when you're saying words, she needs to come up with the visuals in her mind. So when I created the course with her, and I hope you've done the course. If you haven't, I'm going to be talking about the course, I think in another 2 episodes' time. The webinar will be available on how to extend and stretch children. That Temple Grandin course is honestly, I love that course. It was my favorite when I created it, having Temple's lived experience. And also she's like my hero. And then myself actually explaining how to use the information is invaluable. So make sure you keep an eye out for that podcast when it drops. In fact, subscribe to my podcast so it just pops up in your podcast and you've got it there when you're looking for something to listen to. Anyway, with Temple, she talked in the course about the importance of understanding the child's slow processing time. I would love you over the next week to just stand back and watch. What I find with processing time, often it's a look in their eyes. I can tell when they're processing, when they're thinking. And other times I can tell that look means they're actually anxious, or the look may mean I'm actually trying to self-regulate. So keep an eye out for that. But this is about slow processing. So the questions I ask is, have you noticed any of these signs in the children you know? Unorganised, often forgets or loses or forgets homework, rarely completes tests on time, and leaves multiple questions unanswered in timed activities or exams. Can't perform simple maths problems, sequences or calculations. Turns in incomplete homework because they don't understand the instructions. Need a quiet area to study and is often distracted by background noise. Lacks focus when reading and taking notes. Tries to avoid multiple step problems and needs extra time to make decisions. All of these would tell you this child needs different supports, that the current supports are set up for neurotypical children and we need to adjust for our children with neurodiversity and particularly our children with sensory processing. Often this has to do with processing speed. But some of our children, it's visual processing and some it's auditory processing. Some of our children take longer to actually think things through. So I would recommend having a look at all the ideas I've got in these pages. On page 6 and 7, I'm not going to read them out, but it also has some strategies to try at home. There is some great ideas to helping put in place visuals, teaching ideas, classroom tips like allowing extra time, actually getting them, encouraging the student to answer questions in class and checking in with them more. Just lots of simple and short ideas, keeping things short and sharp. And those of you who have done my workshops, this is the GPS stuff. What can you do to make your instructions clear, concise, like your GPS? It doesn't overwhelm you with 100 instructions. And then I've got a couple of pages. They're not all sensory, but I thought it was quite handy. It was behaviour. Why do children do that? Solutions and strategies for common classroom behaviours. Now, some of them are sensory, some are not, but I just thought it was a really interesting one, like chewing on a hat string or objects. Hiding and running away. See, some of those children actually need a preventative break. It's actually when they're hiding and running away, we need to give them more breaks. And I'm going to be talking about those breaks in the webinar. Difficulty accepting criticism. A lot of my children, actually that fear of making mistakes is because their perfectionism is around their anxiety, and that anxiety can be sensory based, which is why in the Red Beast workbook, we've included part of anger comes from sensory. You must understand emotional regulation and sensory regulation can be connected. Remember, if you're hungry, you can be angry. So don't forget that. Swearing. See, in the Red Beast, we've got a great thing about using swear words and hard words. There's a great activity. Make sure you have a look at that. Kay taught me that activity and I just love it, love it, love it. But some children actually like the sound of swear words. They like the saying the words over and over again, and that can be a stim, which can be sensorily calming. So being aware of that. Not wanting to leave a special interest. Some of my children, this is when they're happy. What Dean Beadle calls is autistic joy. For some of my children, this is the only time they feel calm and in control. Temple Grandin would get in that squeeze machine, which was her special interest for a while, inventing that squeeze machine to give herself the deep pressure. When she was younger, she used to love to watch a coin spin. These are all sensory seeking activities. Often what brings a child joy or their special interest are actually sensory, and it helps them regulate and engage for longer. Dean Beadle would say, if you gave me a 5-minute break, you'll get another 20 minutes work from me. Very important to understand. What is that child's break? Do they need the quiet, calm tent, or do they need actually the sensory movement and stimulation and carrying heavy things? I've got in here sniffing other children because some of my children actually love sniffing. Some of my children hate smell, but some of my children actually love sniffing things and they actually seek that out. I know Wen Lawson used to talk in their speech, their talks about her, sorry, they've changed gender since I heard them speak about this. Their his need to sniff people and objects and the importance of that. Sorry, I got all my pronouns all muddled up there. This is why I should write down, not to sit and have a coffee with you. Excuse me. So when Lawson is now he, him, so I apologise if you're listening when, but when many years ago told these great stories about how when he was in line and someone in front of him would have on a woolen jumper that was washed with eucalyptus, he couldn't help but lean in and smell it because he just loved that. But it was actually the calm smell. And I found that incredibly helpful because I had a little boy who used to love sniff people. So we just put that smell he loved on a handkerchief so he could smell that smell. So he had access to that smell rather than smelling people. But that smelling was very calming. And if you think years ago, smelling salts and things, like people have used sniffing for years to regulate. And then I've got that constant thirst, toileting, the eating and so forth. So have a look at those. But then I go on page 14 to remember the underlying cause of behaviour could be toilet, drink, thirst and tired. And then I've given you some great strategies around some ideas to try around sleep. But as I say, I haven't got foolproof ones. But I was interested. I asked on my Facebook, does the kids with ASD, ADHD, ODD, PDA, SBA have difficulty staying asleep or going to sleep? 27% said staying asleep, 73% said going to sleep. So isn't that interesting? And think of how that can impact on you. So I've got 16 great tips for sleep. When Lawson hates the feeling of skin on skin. So even in hot weather needs to wear fully covered pajamas with socks on so no skin is touching any other part of his skin. So isn't that interesting? Then I've got a section on interoception, which is so important. That is, remember, many of my children don't know they're thirsty, need the toilet, don't know they're hungry. They may not recognise that need to go, which is why I personally think we need to think about routines around that. Think of yourself. Do you have a routine and go to the toilet before you leave the house? Yes. Well, put that routine in place. Don't expect this child to remember to go because their body often doesn't send the signal until it's too late. I've also got a very important part I want all of you to read on page 18, which is called on misophobia, which is why many of my children do not eat at school. This is the sound of people crunching, chip packets opening, the sound sensitivity, but it's a whole nother nervous system reaction. It is can cause a meltdown. And so many of my children actually will not eat at school for the fear of that sound, of that noise of other people drinking, eating, crunching. Each child's very different. Parents, if you know your child has misophobia, please talk to the school about that. Your child might need to eat. I like to send them out for a walk and eat rather than eating around other people. It's very, very important. And then I have some of my favorite sensory tools. So there is a little twisty man key ring, which for children who like that constant movement, I like to put on their pencil case so that if they're having to sit at their desk in the older years and listen to instruction, they've got something in their hands to twist. The wooden hand massagers, which are my fave thing. So these are great in pockets for children who like deep pressure. They can rub them. Or some of my ADHD kids like to roll the ball. They used to be at the Body Shop many years ago, but they're not available there now. So have a look. I've got my favourite smiley face stress ball. Oh, here's my cat joining me. She always loves to join me for these podcasts, even though I shut the door. I don't know how she snuck in. So good news. I have finished sharing. There's also a whole lot of books in there and resources. And on the back page of the ebook are all the dates for the upcoming workshops, plus information on the online on-demand courses. So I hope you can join me soon, either face-to-face for the live free webinar, Hour of Power, Wednesday, August the 2nd. Can't wait to see you soon. I know it's going to be jam-packed with strategies to make a difference to you and the children you know. I hope you've got some great tips and strategies to make a difference. Remember, strategies wear out and not every strategy works for everybody. If you're ready to dive in deeper to more strategies and ideas to make a difference, I'd highly recommend you consider Dr. Tony Attwood or my online courses. For more information, visit my website www.sulaki.com.au.